Thank you. All set? Are you ready to All right. I'd like to call to order the Monday, May 13th, 2024 board work session meeting. If you could call the roll, please.
Mrs. Hartley,
Here.
Mrs. Henners,
Here.
Dr. LaFay,
Here.
Mr. Rager, here. Mrs. Mast.
Here. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We could have an approval for the agenda for the special meeting, please. So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Mr. Rager,
Yes.
Mrs. Henners,
Yes.
Dr. LaFay,
Yeah.
Mrs. Mast.
Yes. Great.
Okay, so tonight we're here, special meeting, really talk about master facility planning. So ABG is here. They're going to help us with the conversation, but I also have a little slideshow. So just review of the work. I've added in red the new stuff, but we had the OFCC do their assessment in 2021. We consolidated to 3 buildings. We've partnered with AVG for master facility planning. They did their assessment validation. They shared that out at the January meeting. There was board engagement of the community, and we've been considering a pre-K-12 project, basically at the cost of $80 million. And then at the last meeting, or 2 meetings ago, we moved forward with land survey, and then some facility design programming has started. And then just remember that action point that to be on the November 2024 ballot for facilities, we need to have the first of 2 resolutions passed and submitted to the Board of Elections by July 8th. So really the June meeting, that first resolution has to pass, and then July, the second resolution would have to pass, and that after that second resolution passes and gets submitted to the Board of Elections, we're officially on the ballot. So we haven't made that decision yet, but we're still doing fact-finding, due diligence work, and everything else so that when that decision has to be made, we can make it because we have all the information. And we wouldn't say we're not going because we didn't have pieces of information. So we're going to talk about the land survey in some detail here. And, sorry. So an option moving forward, because with the $80 million that did exceed our debt capacity is 65 million, special debt capacity, special waiver is about 68 million. So 80 million is well beyond that. And so we have been talking about making key improvements at Woodlands to extend its usability for instruction, focusing on the items that maintain a safe, dry, and warm environment, and then looking to do a 6 through 12 building with voter approved bond resources. We're talking about locating it at the property surrounding the Woodlands building, remove McCormick from district service, and then this idea of maintaining the west end of the high school to serve as a district and community sports campus, keeping those spaces listed, and then because of the building at Woodlands, we'd have to relocate softball, baseball, or potentially both. So, land survey. I'm going to kick it over to AVG. Do you want to start with, so welcome. Do you guys remember Syed and Murtaza? Okay. So this is the high school plot. So I don't know if you guys want to start there. Why we did not survey it? Just a little review of that. Yep.
Evening. So this few meetings ago, you asked us this site, which is the high school where we are right now. It is divided into many different parcels. In between, we have a road which is owned by the city, which is the city road. And if you look at the biggest parcel on the lower left-hand corner, it's around 8.5 acres. Most of it is in the wetland area, because I did consult our it's a third party PSI, which is a testing company. It's a nationwide. They have an office all over. They are the biggest testing company in this area. Different projects, and they do environmental work also. They did some work over here also. So I called them up and I asked them, I want to check it out. This stream property, anything most of it is in wetland. So wetland, once it's in a wetland, it's an uphill battle all the way. So there's no way we can reclaim that. That's my so, and again, it's disjointed. You can see that how it's disjointed. You know, there's not a big. Instead of spending district's money to do a survey of this property, we talked to survey of this property, because it's not there's not a big piece of property where we can, and you can see there's a property is owned by private.
Yeah. That's where I was going to add. You know, talking with community members, they're like, "Yeah, just take Jim Campbell and push it up closer to those condos." I say, "Hey, that's a great idea, but we don't own that land. So we own the house that we rent, and then there's this parcel that is privately owned." So moving that road north to get closer to those condos is not feasible with the land that we own today. So, yeah.
So,
Before you start again, when each of you are talking, can you move the microphone
Oh,
like
I'm sorry.
closer? I just want to make sure that if there's people listening, that they
Okay.
can hear you.
Oh, sure. So having said that, so we didn't survey this property because we can see it from the GIS map, what you own and how much you own, and all these. You can see there's small little parcels all over. So instead of spending 15,000-20,000 of district's money, we didn't survey this property because we already know pretty much what you have over there in terms of there are a lot of major roads to be closed to make it happen and things like that. So
Other property is the Woodlands one.
Woodland ones, you own two parcels over there. Total adds up to 37 some acres. But there is a paper street. If you look at in the middle, that I can, yeah, that's a street which is on paper. It has never been developed, and there is a gas line goes right through that. There's a gas house. I can. There's a gas house right on top of here. So, gas line, the officer asked for time to find out. The surveyor company we hired on behalf of the district has been in contact with the gas company. They're not easy to get hold of, or they don't respond at your time. But finally, we got hold of them, and we are trying to find out how much is the easement they have on either side of the gas line. Okay, so we have not got any answer yet. It's between 15 to 20 or 30 feet on either side. We cannot build a building on it. We can always build a road. We can always build a playground, things like that. But they don't want us to build a building on it. We have in our previous projects, we have moved the gas line. Not an easy thing. Took us a year to move gas line. Just 30, 40 feet, which was in our way. But we were able to do it, but it took us a long time and cost district some money to do it. But gas line doesn't bother us right now. It is not in our way. We can build on either side, on east or west side of the gas line. So that is not our. The only thing which we want to make sure is that we know the easement, how far we have to be away. So we will find out. And the paper street which you don't own, that is easy for. We have done that. City has vacated those streets to the districts all the time, so that can be vacated. We don't want to spend money right now. Once you get on the ballot, then we can start that paperwork with the surveying company. The only thing we are still checking there. Everything looks good. We have soil borings going on. I don't know if they're on site or not. We have some investigation. How is the soil over there? If you want to put a building over there, how much the capacity of that land is. Obviously, there's a school over there, so it seems to be good. But still, we want to do our due diligence. So that is going on. We are also checking some sanitary lines which come and stop over there at that, what is that street on the top?
Maple?
Maple, yeah. So there was a discussion. I don't know if you brought it up.
Yeah, so I'll say that I talked with the city with this information, and the paper road, the city said that there is a process for that, but they've done that with other of these, specifically in this area. They've closed other ones in that area, so they didn't see, from the city's perspective, they saw that if you follow the process, then it shouldn't be a problem. So, and then the other part that they noted was there was a developer looking to put some housing potentially in one of these other farm lands that maybe is not even on that graphic. And there was some concerns from the Erie County Sewer District that the sewer lines might not be able to handle the capacity of additional homes. And so that's what Syed's talking about as far as if we expand our footprint of a school and students and water use on this property, would that exceed the capacity of that sewer line? So we're still working to get that answer. And it may not, because again, that assessment of additional sewer use may be all encompassing of high school and McCormick as well. And so if we're moving to this property, but we're reducing our usage here, it might be nets out to a zero, right? So we're working on that.
So we are waiting for some answers from there. So otherwise, this site looks promising. Our goal is what we did is, and we studied this in terms of laying out a potential building, not exact same size, but some footprint, just to see how it fits and where we can do it economically in terms of we don't have to bring all the utilities in all the way to the end of the 30 acres and all that. So we are still in the process of studying that.
So I guess any questions about the survey, why we didn't do the high school, and why we're focusing mostly on Woodlands?
I thought that turbine was being repaired.
Yeah, so I reached out and it took a month to get a response back from them. I said, can you give me a price on removal or relocation? They responded like 4 days ago, I think, and they said removal is $25,000. Relocation, they're looking into it. That's where we're at with that. It's Britt is her name. I found him or her through Paul's email. It's the only contact I'm able to find for anybody dealing with the wind turbine. Pure Energy, I believe, is the company who was servicing the wind turbine, and I'm assuming that's person is associated with them, but I'm not 100%. We can't find the contract. I believe it got lost in the flood. So I reached out to them when I found out that they were a contact for it. They informed me that they had also lost our contract in a flood. So I don't have a copy of our contract.
But other neighboring schools have the same. When we put ours in, they put theirs in. So one was able to share their contract with us. Within that contract, it's pretty clear that the equipment is owned by this Sun Energy company. So the fee that we would have to pay is to help cover the cost of restoring the land back to what it was prior to being used for the wind turbine. So if you go out there, you see the wind blades and the turbine and the pole that holds it up, but in the ground is, I would assume, concrete foundational work and electrical work that ties back into our grid. So restoring some of that land is part of what our obligation is. That 25, I would guess, to remove a turbine like that would cost a lot more than 25. So we're only paying for a portion of it, and it is in that contract that the other district had. So, it kind of lines up as far as seeming like that would be the cost or our responsibility or obligation to have that removed. Yep.
Traffic.
So
Traffic. At what point? Because I do think it's something we have to be mindful of and planning for before we would say, for sure, yes, we'll do this and we'll figure it out. Because the traffic has already been a challenge. And this is only a school for half the number of children, many of whom ride a bus. So the car traffic is a problem at a reduced load. We have junior high students, we have high school students who are driving themselves. It's going to increase substantially.
So we just did a couple of studies, just to see. One study is to put it on the east property, and a couple of studies we did on putting right behind the Woodland school. So if the district wants to make a connection to the new portion of it, that could happen also, and so we can share those little plans. By no means those are plans, these are just studies, in this case, we are bringing buses if you look at on the lower left side, at the bottom of the screen, and we were bringing cars from Maple all the way in. So everybody is off the street, so they are coming to your property and then going back.
Yeah, I think what I'm a little bit less concerned about the traffic once it's coming to our property or accessing. It's the traffic coming in, because then it's only egress is off of Cleveland Road. And there's really just that one road, Lake Erie Parkway. So it backs up in, especially westbound, as cars are sitting there, because it's only a 2-lane road. So cars waiting to turn down Lake Erie Parkway to drop off children. And then as they're waiting to pull out, after they've dropped children off or picked children up. So it's just, I don't expect you to have an answer right now, but just curious if that's been part of it or not yet.
Not yet.
Something to think about.
We work with our civil and landscape people, and we I don't know whether we need a traffic study over here. Normally we do on a bigger project, not a bigger project, bigger traffic, like Lorraine Road.
Sure.
or main traffic. This is all residential, basically traffic. That's how we see it. But we can check it out. Whether, I don't know, there's a signalization needed over here. I don't think so. But this is just my feeling of it. Where there is a major street over there, we have added signals and other things. We have done this. If you look at in the area, we have a lot of properties which are right in the center of the neighborhood. So we have not.
I think that's one of the challenges, though. There's zero access to exit to the east, to the south, and we're not supposed to exit to the north. So there is one direction where all the traffic can come in and out. And what I wondered, James, can you go back one where we talk about
like the unimproved right of ways. There's a number of them you can see to the north that do connect out to Cleveland Road. So I don't know if it's worth exploring. Possibly also looking to have those vacated if we were to look at that and then have that, or if the city were to pave it, but have it be restricted as just a simple like the buses, or eastbound traffic goes out this way and westbound can stay Lake Erie Parkway. Because the problem is that intersection at Rye Beach Road, which does get heavy traffic. And so I don't think they can really put a light in there because it's too close to that busy intersection. We have a lot of traffic that comes off and heads west. But those are just ideas. There was a long time ago, I think, talk of connecting Maple, because that right of way does connect all the way quite a distance to another neighborhood where it is paved. But I don't know that that would do anything. It almost feel like it'd be interesting to explore some of the ones that are right there, if like that could handle some traffic coming out.
And we know we're working with another company who is doing traffic through this this route too. There are a couple of three roundabouts are coming over here. You may already know that, you know. So I don't know that helps. I don't think it helps us in any shape or form. We are off of that, you know. We are on a side street, but we have not looked at it beyond our property. The green one is owned by the city, so that property is. So I don't know if there's any discussion with the city regarding that or not, you know. But we have not looked at beyond this property which we are
Existing
looking at, you know, right now.
Yeah, so, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I know there's a lot of, people for and against the roundabouts, but the one thing that it might help there is the roundabout at Rye Beach in Cleveland. You'd want to have a light anymore, so in the peak time in the morning when people are turning right to come in and turning left to go out, it would kind of keep flowing. So I know it, because we only have 2 times a day where it's bad, but it might actually help because that intersection's so close to Rye Beach,
Yeah.
because that would keep flowing. Because right now, if some people are turning left, it backs up with a short left turn lane, and then it backs up and nobody can turn left until it kind of clears out again.
So my concern is that the way that light is timed right now, it's like 4 ways. So one side goes, so you've got three ways of traffic basically stopped. And I think that's when people have a break to turn in and get out, when those cars that are waiting there to turn move. And then that creates a very small break. Otherwise, you've got it coming from this way, you've got people turning from that way. My worry for the roundabout is it's going to be continuous traffic. The cars will constantly be moving, but that's not for us to figure out, right? But it would be interesting for us to explore and at least know what we're getting into.
And I was talking to the same traffic engineer who is working over here. It's called Trans System. They are nationwide. They're a big company. And because we wanted to hire them to do we hired them to do a traffic study for another project we had. And they were telling me or telling us that roundabouts move more traffic than the signal does. That's what they told me, and I was really surprised to hear that, you know. And the reason, and my experience with that is, in Avon, they just put one on 83, right on 83 and Mill, and that I used to go there, you know. We live close by, so you are there. Now it just keeps on moving, you know. So that roundabout, I don't know how far it is from this. Is it
One block.
1 block?
So two parcels.
Yeah.
So when you come out Lake Erie Parkway,
Yeah.
there's the Burger King that I understand has
Yeah.
been sold and might be developed again, and then a gas station,
Oh,
and it's the
that's
road.
it, yeah.
So it's just a very short span.
Yeah, I'll just add in that ODOT had that community engagement event, and so I attended that, and I saw the drawings of the different roundabouts from here all the way down closer to Cedar Point. And one thing that I took away from it was one of the consultants was talking about, yes, you might have a fender bender in a roundabout, but because of the design of a roundabout, it forces everyone to slow down. So you have like a 20-mile-an-hour fender bender as opposed to like a 35, 40-mile-an-hour fender bender. So it's a safer intersection than a lighted intersection. And then I specifically asked the question: if I'm coming from Sawmill and I'm coming back towards Huron, and I see that light, and it might change, I push on that gas a little bit, right? And so now when I'm coming to our intersection that we're talking about, I'm probably going 40 to 45 when it's really supposed to be 35. If I had a traffic circle, it would force me to slow down to about 20, 25, and then when I come out of that, I may be doing 30 as I pass the Erie Parkway. So is that going to help us with traffic or slow us or make it worse? And he hesitated because he didn't know what side I was kind of like leaning. And then he gave an answer, and I said, "Oh, I agree with you." And he's like, "Oh yeah, it will create a slower environment, which will create a safer environment." So the flow of cars might be a little bit more continuous than the light, but they're flowing at a slower rate.
Sure.
And the majority of the people coming off of 2 and then hitting that roundabout are going to keep going around and then head towards Sandusky. So
Yeah, I just, yeah, again,
I think it's going to
the
help us.
continuous flow, I think, is just something that is going to change. The traffic study that was done a couple years ago was done in June. It didn't have any school traffic with it. So I'm just saying it's things that we need to be mindful of because this is going to impact our community. We want to understand how it will impact, if it's going to impact it. So that's all.
So we could look at, with the city also, with the city.
I talked with 4 of the different engineers there, 4 or 5. I don't know. We kept going around the different ones and talking. And my opinion, like, they answered some of the questions, but they were pretty much like, "Yeah, it's not going to cause a problem." So it was a little bit dismissive of it too. So I was kind of like, "Are you sure? Do you really know?" Like, and I didn't know their study was in June. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
The one on the bridge that was
It
like
is.
in the dead of winter, right? Like,
It's not a problem. Like, well, I think it might be a problem, but it's okay. Whatever.
but to piggyback off your point, Stacey, too, I think what we envision is like, how do kids and parents, if what we're envisioning is like all of the grades, coming in and leaving for school and different events, how do kids, whether they're walking, biking, driving, and we know some of these are kids driving, so it's not just, adults who are maybe like more experienced, like this parking lot at 2:35 is Armageddon, right? Am I saying that wrong in any way? Yeah, I mean, like, honestly. So I think that's something we really want to be thoughtful about, and not like underplay that. That's not a detail, like how people get in and out of something safely, and hopefully with the least amount of disturbance to the existing neighborhood that's there. So I know that might be something that costs a little bit more or that requires a little out of the box thinking, but I'd encourage us to really pursue that so that this feels like an organized campus, not something that kind of got hodgepodged into the middle of the back of a neighborhood.
So when a project like this is underway, do the people that live in the surrounding neighborhoods get notification, and do they have the ability to come to a meeting that is approving a project? Or I know, like in our neighborhood, when there's a project or someone's moving, lines or easements or building a home, but they're building outside of the scope of the original footprint, we all get notification if we're in a certain surrounding area of a home, and you can come and plead your case that you don't care or that you really have an issue with it. And so is that something that could potentially happen with this project?
every project it does.
Okay.
It is required. It is the law of the land for us to go through planning and building. So before any project which is sent out for bids or constructed, we have a planning commission. Every city has a planning commission, and all those the school districts. Just to tell you, just to share with you, you may already know, the school districts is a public entity, so you can do anything on your property by law. That is by law.
As long as you
As long as you are not creating any issues, traffic uh, is no matter where you build, there's going to be a traffic issue. You know, somebody we change traffic today over here, people will be concerned. So, but yes, as a as a as a as a school district, you want to be a good neighbor, so you want to present your plan. You want to have input from the people. We do on every single project, and you you accommodate them as much as you can within your funds and whatever is possible. Um, Fences, landscaping, whatever, traffic too, because at the maximum we can do is do a traffic study of this. And when we do a traffic study of this site, I don't know how much will it cost, but um, it will take into account of projected enrollment. And every traffic study, when they do, whether it is done in summer, winter, whatever, they take what is happening in the area. They do the count. There are people who are sitting on the street doing counting over there. So we can do a traffic study over here also. With,
There's a certain threshold that warrants a traffic study. It has to do with number of stops, or number of just traffic issues.
and you can do traffic study optional also. But what warrants a different kind of traffic mitigation is based on that study. I cannot put a stop sign anywhere unless the traffic report says that to put a stop sign. Even on your roads, city cannot put a traffic stop sign, or they can move one stop sign from here to there. No, it has to be done by a study and warranted by the study. So when there's a signal, if it is warranted, then it's your option to put it or not. But we cannot just put a signal because we think that there should be a signal. It has to come out of that study. What what kind of signalization, what kind of stop sign, one way, two way, three way, whatever those are. So if that could be done easily, without any problem. If you want, we can get solicitation from different traffic engineers and get you a proposal for this site. But
I'm less like worried about counting cars, which I get that that's like a whatever the standard of how things are measured. I more in the what are our options of like laying out entrances and exits, and is there some other solution to the roadways that are set now that would enable like actual streets with sidewalks on either side, as opposed to, I mean, right now, whether it's Deerwood, Buckeye, those are the two that you can access Woodlands without going down Lake Erie Parkway. I mean, they're barely wide enough to accommodate two cars of regular size going through at the same time, barely. So now I'm envisioning like kids coming, especially from the east, Wexford, Village Green, and I get they've got the back end, like but then I think of the kids from like Grand Forest Beach and the other side of the street. Like, how are they getting to school? And like, because if they have to walk down Deerwood, I drop my kid off every day for softball there. It is not a safe place to like drive in and out and then have a bunch of walkers.
Yeah, even right now, we remind parents like safe traveling. Catalpa is a dead end street that has a paved sidewalk walkway from the dead end into the property that we own. And the city used their brush hog to clear out some of the overgrowth that was on the paper road of the closed portion of that road. So we're trying to make it a more inviting way to walk, and really anyone walking or riding a bike should use Catalpa because it's a dead end. There's little to no traffic on that road. It does become treacherous when you have kids walking on both sides of Deerwood and then a bus rolling down. I mean, at least walk on one side so that we could, hug the other side and really just watch the one mirror as opposed to both. So really, today the answer is we encourage them to take Catalpa. But yeah, further exploration of those tiny, like I agree. For me, the traffic concern are those roads to the north. They're small roads. They used to probably originally be for like beach homes that have now become year-round homes. And so the roads are small without sidewalks. So if there's a way to design and encourage people to take the main road out, that Erie Parkway Road, that will be better for everyone, as far as people coming in and out of the property and students and parents walking safely. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
So just to finish that thought, I feel like our need is less of, for what it's worth, maybe it's a traffic study but it's more of like a civil engineer, like somebody who can look at that and say, hey, maybe I can see like utilizing like whether it's putting in a different road, or maybe we can connect some way. I don't know what that looks like, but I mean that's what I would throw out there, because I think just trying to use the current infrastructure and doubling, if not more, and I think it is more, the number of traffic and bikers and walkers, I think it's not great.
And just last part on that is that those streets, the Deerwood, Catalpa, Buckeye, and then the ones to the north of Cleveland Road, they have a beach association, and I reached out to the president of that beach association to say, hey, I would like, not today, but I'd like an opportunity at some point to meet with your specific residents, right? Those on those streets. And he was a very nice gentleman. He said, well, just to be clear, like, we're only a beach association. Like, not all the residents are members of this association. And he goes, so I don't know if we're the right venue. But he was going to work to help me connect with those residents really on those 2 or 3 streets, Catalpa, Buckeye, and Deerwood. Because I think hearing directly from them as far as, what is the concern, right? Is it every vehicle that travels down there, or is there a tolerance, like, yeah, the big yellow bus, we understand, we live by a school, and so you're going to have a school bus, but when parents are cutting through to cut in line of the student drop-off, that's when we get annoyed, right? Or,
I'll throw 100. I'm not like picking on
High
high
school
schoolers. I have
students,
2,
yeah.
but throw 100 high school drivers.
correct, right. So they'd be like, we're fine with the buses, we're fine with safety services, we're not really excited about high school drivers zipping down our road, right? So
Right.
that's what I need to hear from the residents that are directly affected by a potential expansion here. So.
I think we can like
We can
predict
guess.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go ask them, but I think we can predict that will be forthcoming.
To get behind the softball field right now, you have to do that from Lake Erie.
Correct, there's like a gravel road there. Yep. That's the next part. There's footprint building. So ABG went ahead and did conceptual drawings of 3 options. And so we'll walk through those. And this is option 1.
So this is based on a preliminary program. We just took the number of students times square feet times the size of the building, and this was 131,000 if I remember it right. Just right over here. What is that? 118. What? No, this one was bigger. This is around 128,000 square feet building. This does not in any shape or form is what you may have it over here. Just we wanted to look at the footprint, look at where the buses can come and drop off, pick up. That was one option. Another option was to put this building on the east side. In the east, yeah. The number 2 option is just flip this building and get people in and out of there as soon as possible, and bring the buses from the back side. So this was just looking at different options, different footprint. This is not by any stretch stretch of imagination is the design and our landscaping or roadways. Again, we will make sure that everybody's off the street when they come into the.
I think like the big ideas though in option 1 and 2, there is a connector back towards Woodlands, the new part of Woodlands, but Woodlands in totality. And when we think about programming for students that we have, like the TLC group, every Tuesday they get on a bus, they go over to Woodlands, and they work with the little ones. If there's this connector hall, then there is no bus. They just walk down the hall, and they can do that, those activities. We don't really share too much staff with between Woodlands and the other 2 buildings. We do share some special ed related services. So again, putting them all on one campus. And then the other big ideas is you can see how there's like the one section would be like the middle school section, and then the central part would be those shared spaces of gyms and art rooms and those types of spaces, offices, main office, guidance counselor offices, and then the other section would be like the high school wing. So I think the idea of, you know, when there was talks of bringing 8th grade up here, people were like, whoa, yeah, because they would just be intermixed with the crowd, right? They would like 8th graders with seniors walking down the hall together. That gave some people concern. This has them still under one roof in one new building, but still kind of in their zones or in their areas. And I think both of these concepts have 2 stories. Yep. So 2 stories. So Woodlands is all 1 story, and then this would be like a 2-story structure. And then the third option. Oh, wait.
Just to bring everybody off this Maple and Lake Creek Parkway, so nobody's on the street while they are dropping off, picking up. So this is just ideas, you know. It's not by any. It's, it's still up in the air. We just wanted to see how can we fit a site and parking and all the playgrounds, all that. Yes, we can. Now, what you are rightfully concerned is traffic coming in and out of this campus, you know. So that's a thing which we have to take a look at it, you know, and see if this Catalpa, which is a closed street.
That's a closed street, yeah, dead end.
It's a paper street also.
Half paper.
Half paper, is it half?
It's a couple of
Can it be vacated to the school?
There's like 3 houses.
Yeah.
I can't
Because-
tell. There's trees.
Because if they can vacate this one, can they vacate that one? And that becomes only for the school, you know. So that could be another option to look at, you know.
In
We I don't know if you're familiar with the Elyria High School. We closed 6th Street, which is was an active street, and the district bought a whole block of land in 6th and 7th, and from 5th to 7th we built a campus over there. So
We're still kind of on a grid there where you might take a ACT there. So I've been driven around. You're still on a grid,
Yeah.
right? A city grid, so you still have access on all sides, if not some of it's one way, I believe. But right.
So I mean, if there's a possibility to look at that, you know, so we can not even bother neighborhood, you know, if there's a way we can work with the city.
I think with all 3 of these concepts, I'm going to flip back. There's 1, 2, and then 3. All of them, you can see that paper road that's there. The paper road also has the gas line. We have roadways and parking lots on it, but not a building. So yeah, the question of can a building fit on one side or the other, ABG has some concepts that show it could. It's feasible.
I like option 3, but if you look at it, you can tell it's further away from
Utilities.
utilities.
So we have to bring all the gas.
There's more pavement, there's more concrete. So it's just,
They're still more expensive than the 1 and 2.
And then with this option 3, you can see the box that the city owns. We have some conceptual drawings onto that, which baseball field, I think you could pretty much understand. But next to it is that rectangle. It says future expansion of the elementary grades, and then that circle above it, I think it says playground, right? Yeah, playground. So that's just, it's hard to read on the graphic there. But, and then this soccer field down here was added just to show conceptually how much space is there. It's like a field's worth of space, playing field worth of space. Not necessarily that we're putting one in, but then so with that city, with that piece of land that was privately owned and then donated to the city, you know, what are options to have it donated from the city, or have it change ownership from city to school? One of them is we could talk about just, hey, you got it as a gift, so you should gift it to the community school, the schools in the community that are going to use it for community use. Another would be, what's the price point on it, and is that something that the district wants to spend money on? The third could be a land exchange. So is there a piece of land that we own that we could exchange for that? So both entities have benefit. And so I bring us back to the high school campus, that 5.5 acres that Syed had talked about earlier, where it's essentially wetland, has little development value. That would be the same true for the city, right? You can't really develop that into city offices or things like that. What it does do, though, is it adds to the city's book of green acreage or green space. And when those national assessments look at different communities and rate different communities as far as value for their residents, one of those indicators is how much green space or park space do they have. So it could become like a park space with maybe a informal walking path and things like that could extend off that Erie Park, or the what is this line called? Yeah. Yep. So it could extend off of that for like a nature walk kind of idea. But that's all just like me like creating ideas. Nothing formal with that at all.
I think there is one that comes through that neighborhood that connects through the woods to get to the railway. No, it's that's how we get there. That's how all the kids cut through it. And it's like you road and probably our property, and then it's where that little like potential like
And then we get to programming. Okay, so we did a programming activity at the, I don't remember what month, April, end of April. And so at that, we had internal district stakeholders. And so we had different groups represented, administration, we had instructional staff, and then we had support staff. So teachers, and then support staff, maintenance, food service, and others, as well as like union leadership. And obviously ABG was there. And so when we were there, summary of where the board's progress has been so far was reviewed, and really the participants were encouraged to dream big. It was, it was dream big, ask for it now, because if you don't ask for it now, we don't want you wait later in the process saying, oh, I wish we would have, right? And so different participants gave some good input. There was a science teacher there that provided a lot of research-based information on square footage, and the larger the lab size, the lower likelihood of accidents and injury. The National Teachers Association of Science had recommendations for a science lab being 1,440 square feet. So those were kind of those big dreams, those big ideas. Let's hear them now. Let's get them in. We used, with ABG's help, we used that OFCC calculation tool, starting with how many students are enrolled in those grades, what's that total square footage, and let's work from there to now start allocating that square footage into spaces. Do you guys want to add more?
Yeah, this is called program of requirement. Like you build your house, you have you decide how many bedrooms, how many levels. Same thing for the school. All the activities which are going to take place. There's a space plate for that. So with this exercise, with all the faculty and staff who were there, we were able to develop a program which was around 128,000 square feet for this 612 campus, based on what we got input from science teachers, art teachers, math teachers, or whoever was there. There were quite a few people who were there. So, so that's we started with. If you go with the OFCC, based on your enrollment, 669 students, 6 to 12, OSFC allows, if you go with OSFC standard, would allow for 107,000 square feet. So we were 21,000 square feet over from their standard. That doesn't mean that you have to follow their standard, that because we asked people to give their input, what size of classrooms they want, what they want. So they gave whatever they. So it ended up 128,000 square feet, and that, you want to carry on from there?
Yeah, that included some of these highlights from it. So a classroom for every teacher, and that classroom was 900 square feet, so a 30 by 30. The new wing of Woodlands, the 2002 edition, those classrooms are 30 by 30. So that's the size classroom we're talking about. There was essentially 4 classrooms for the core classes, and then classrooms for electives. We did have a larger space for, so the science labs had a larger square footage, and we used that number that was recommended from the national standard, which is larger than the OFCC standard. And then the specials of Project Lead the Way, that was a larger lab space. Art rooms were a little bit larger. We included performing arts spaces, so band and choir room, as well as ensemble rooms off of those. So for more of that like small group practicing. And it also had storage for band equipment, storage for music sheets, and those kind of spaces. We had an inclusion of flexible learning spaces, so what OFCC calls multi-use studios. And so you can see the square footage on that is equivalent to a science lab size classroom. But that's really where it's not assigned to any specific teacher, but they would, like the old computer labs where teachers would have to reserve it for the day or for the period. Teachers could use that for extended learning activities, that kind of stuff. And then we also had made sure we had spaces for special education classrooms and the support services. So smaller spaces for resource related services, OT, PT, speech, those types. And then also a lot of the high school special ed curriculum includes life skills. So a little kitchenette, shower, bathroom, and then like a chill space, a sensory room is what the term is now. So we had all that included, and that square footage was what we came up to. And then when we crunched the number of square footage and all that, including the improvements at Woodlands, including the removal of the high school and McCormick buildings, so demolition of those, the total project estimated cost was just, 64 million and some change. So let's call it 65 million. And so again, looking at that debt capacity that the district has, we're 65 to 68 million. And so we're right up against that. But that is still 15 million less than the $80 million pre-K-12 concept that we had started with.
PD didn't have any programming behind it either.
That is correct, yeah.
So just like this grew, that probably would have.
That would have grown, yes, for sure. Yep. For administrative spaces, we have reception and secretary areas, administrative offices, student service offices, so that's school counselors' offices, an office for SRO, I think, was within the admin offices, an office for the family health service social worker was part of that student service office, but we've included all those spaces. Staff workroom, break rooms, student dining. We did design an oversized kitchen because the idea is that if we're doing this part now and then 10 to 15 years later we're going to expand out with an elementary, having an oversized kitchen now will take that part of that expansion off, and that way the even with the expanded grades and the expanded kids, the kitchen capacity can handle that amount of volume. We do have in this $65 million project a competitive gym, bleachers on both sides, full-size gym, essentially the same size gym that we have at the high school here, and an auxiliary gym. So that would probably be a gym court and a half. I think it was 8,000 square feet. Yeah. So bigger than the McCormick gym, but a separate gym so that if you have events going on in one gym, you can have practice going on in the other. A stage, and right now that's adjoined to either the gym or the cafeteria, and then the standard mechanical and storage spaces. So server room, electrical room, HVAC, all that. So, yep, okay, so there. I knew I had a slide. So that's where, so you can see the Woodlands improvements, just under $5 million, demolition of the 2 buildings, and then the construction of the new. That pushes that whole scope of work to about 64.1. So I keep rounding up, but that's what I do. So after that activity, the admin team came together. So it was Chad, Julie, Mike, and I. And we said, okay, what can we shave off of different elements that we put in the programming to try to lower that square foot, that total project cost? And emailing with Syed, I said, I think we'd have to get rid of about 10,000 square feet to make that difference, to get from 65 down to 60 million. And he confirmed, yeah, you need to get rid of about 10,000. So what we looked at doing, going from a 900 square foot classroom to an 845 square foot classroom. So that's a 30 by 28.2. So let's just call it 28. So 2 feet less in a classroom at a middle and high school level. You're probably not going to notice those 2 feet. Reduce the science labs and the multi-use studio square footage. So they're still larger than the regular size classroom, but reduce those back towards the OFCC recommended square footage.
So how much?
I think it's 1,200.
Versus 1440.
1440, yeah. So, and then we had 3 ensemble rooms in the original programming, so we're going to carve 1 out. Reduce the square footage of the front office, so just a little bit less space there. But we did maintain the spaces identified. So the outcome was we were still able to maintain spaces that the stakeholders wanted in the programming. So they wanted science labs. They wanted this flexible multi-use studio space, and those different elements. So we were able to maintain those. They're just maybe a little smaller than what the first program had. And so that brings us to now, again, the Woodlands improvements, the removal of middle school and high school, and then the 6 through 12 project. That brings that total scope of work just under $60 million.
On that second time, taking a look at the programming, did you verify the number of classrooms? Because there were a number kind of thrown in there at the end and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the other thing. There was we did go and reduce the number of classrooms too, because towards the end of the programming with the large group, they're like, wow, we need an extra classroom. And we're like, for what? Well, there's times that like a counselor maybe needs to meet with kids, or a college recruiter needs to meet with kids, and it's nice to have a room. And I'm like, okay, but there's this like multi-use room that you could have. And instead of like getting into that, because it was towards the end of the process and we're all getting tired, I'm like, just add the room. And then, so we did scale back those rooms.
Then, but you do have a few like conference rooms and then council area, things like that would be available for small.
Yeah, for sure. And
meetings,
even
different times, and there's some other small rooms too. So.
Yeah, there are conference rooms both in the school counselor's office, the main office, and the special ed area. And then even the cafeteria space, it's the cafeteria, the student dining is something like 4,400 square feet. The high school right now, we went down and measured it. It's 1,400 square feet. So to go from 1,400 to 4,000, it's going to feel like a really large cafeteria. So we could be strategic with how we you can have like a glass partition like this, and that creates like a quiet space, and then you have the social cafeteria. So on a typical day, a kid could say, hey, I just want to read my book and eat my lunch and go in the quiet space and do my work. The next day, I want to hang out with my friends, eat lunch, be more social, so they eat here. The counselor could say, hey, we have this, school recruiter that wants to talk with a group of kids. So today, quiet room, you guys are going to have to go to the main cafeteria. And the idea of like this partition is like it deadens sound, but it's still observation-wise for administration to supervise kids. They can see kids and things like that. So yeah, we can make spaces within the square footage that are there. And so the $60 million project, it's under that debt capacity. And so it allows us to go to the voters for a traditional property bond tax levy structure. We don't have to get to that bond tax plus either income or property for a COPS lease to own type structure.
Question.
Yep.
So I know when we did the initial projections that included K through 12 and some type of new build for K through 12, that estimate was like predicated on the OFCC's metrics, right? And we've clearly kind of put those aside and gone with, hey, if we're getting real about how much space we need and what we're using it for, we're not necessarily like using the OFCC's guidance as right.
Yep.
So did we try that, or did we consider like applying that same exercise to Woodlands to see, okay, if we encompass something new for that grade too, like could we drive the cost down from 80 to what?
Well, I think like the numbers that we were using OFCC numbers to get to that 80 million, and that led us. So also when we did so we used the numbers from OFCC to get to 80 million, 78 million, let's call it. When we did the programming, we started with how much square footage does the OFCC calculator give us, and then when we ended the first programming, we were about 20,000 square feet over that. So if we extrapolated that to say, okay, OFCC would have said you should use this much square footage at this cost, but we're actually going to use 20,000 square foot more, and you multiply square footage roughly costs 400 a square foot. It would be that much more for that extra $20,000. So we've scaled back the original programming of the 6 through 12 to be 10,000 square feet less. So we're still more square footage than what OFCC would recommend. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is if we wanted to say, well, OFCC said that it was this much square footage to a $78 million project, then we did the programming, we would have resulted in a higher number. And I think
that's
yeah.
when everything got added, we ended up figuring I assume that would happen when people put all their wants and needs into Woodlands as well, so it would get bigger than the. I mean, is that what you typically see at a lot of projects? Or?
Every time. And the other thing is, the OFCC did the assessment of Woodlands, and then we came and we did validation, and there was a lot of money to bring that building up to standards and codes and stuff. So the portion that we're looking at is from 2002. That would require less work. The other parts, the older parts, obviously, it's an older building. It would take a lot of money to bring it in. So that formula said it's better to, if you look, it's grayed out over here. What that says is they studied it, they looked at it, it costs more money. It's over their threshold and our threshold of 2/3 to don't throw good money over bad. So it was looked at, but it's not a.
And with the second go around with the reduction of the spaces, if you look at the numbers, I know you're still 11,200 square feet over the OSCC number.
Part of that was adding the second gym though, and an auxiliary gym. In the first calculation, there was only one gym. So when we discussed it as a team, the auxiliary gym and we're going to lose McCormick for a competition gym for the middle school if it closes or whatever potentially. So we added the second gym. Now, right now, like Jane said, it's in as a full competition gym for like a high school. I mean, we could look to scale it back to like the middle school competition, keep the high school over here. But right now it's in as a full, you know, so we had to add, I think, and that's a bigger gym than like you initially had the 8,000 square foot in or something, and then we added a second, like, what's the competition one, 10,
We're at 11.
11,000. So that 11,000 square feet or over is
Right
mostly in that gym.
In
Well, I
Main-
need-
main
see if
is
that
11,000,
Yeah.
and then you have 6,000 square feet of the other gym. 17,000 in the gym, grazing space by itself.
So I just want to play this out like a 20-year plan here, not to like boil the ocean, but just to be like realistic. But we're talking about spending more essentially on grades 6 through 12 than what we were initially talking about when we proposed the 78 million, right? Sorry. But before, but you said that that was predicated on there being less square footage, right? Like 20,000
Yes.
square feet less.
And we're at
So
like,
at that time, that the cost for this to at least address the 6 through 12 was less than, right?
it was like 48 for this.
And we're talking six, not quite 60 now, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I guess what I just want to think about step 2 and not be like,
Well,
like step 1 sounds fun, it sounds good, but like to get to step 2, so we're not talking about we address woodlands 30 years from now, right? We're talking, which is about how the bond, give or take, would have to run. We're talking about like how do we keep woodlands. I hate the warm, safe, and dry because it sounds like a tent in our cave, but like how do we keep it kind of on life support for the next 10 or 15 years? I guess I'm just trying to think if we phase things out in phase 1 and phase 2, are we setting ourselves up to be successful in phase 2? Like how would we get the community support 10 or 15 years from now to put in another 40, 50, $60 million project in for woodlands?
Yeah. So, so one is the original master plan option 2 had a new pre-K 5 and a new 6 through 12. The new 6 through 12 was calculated to be 882,000 and some leftovers.
For 11 million up from that.
No, we're not 11 million for that because I'm looking at that 5206 is what after programming, that's what we got. So 49,882,000 got pushed up to 52,607,000. The other costs that make up that 59 are, you know, the improvements at Woodlands and the removal of those 2 buildings. And the removal of those 2 buildings remains the same number that it was in this original proposal back in January. And so then as far as like, so we do this as phase 1, and now we're looking at, I keep saying 10 to 15 years later, we're looking at phase 2. The idea is that for the last 30 years, Huron has not had any debt capacity or any debt payments. We haven't had a bond levy. We haven't had any debt. And that's been a good thing for our taxpayers and for our district. When you take on debt, then there's these opportunities for refinancing. So we start paying off the debt that we have from the 6 through 12 project. And the advisors that I've talked to, they say between years 8 and 10 is when you can refinance. So the board, the district could decide, okay, we're going to refinance to lower that millage. And then we're going to go back to the voters and say, hey, voters, we refinanced, so your millage is less. Now vote again to bring that millage back to what you're paying now, and or maybe a little more, but you know, it's not a whole on top of. And then that extra money would, or that new money, that new debt would then be able to pay for the elementary project.
What's the projection on that though? Like how can refinancing generate that much extra money? And what are you refinancing off point?
Yeah, so I'm not a financial expert.
What's
So-
it say? Like, I mean,
I know Port Clinton did it on their website. I went in trying to find people to build some schools, and they refinanced and were able to save. It didn't have a number, but it said millions over the course of
30
the
years.
bond, right?
Yeah. But I mean, how many, and is it enough to get to whatever the cost of phase 2 would
Yes.
be? You know what I'm saying? I get like $80 million and $78 million is like the big number. But I guess I want to be careful not to say like, so let's split, we'll have two numbers, and when you add them together are a much bigger number. You know what I mean? And we're
Right.
talking about asking taxpayers then to commit to paying, you know, whatever that is for the next 40, 50 years. I think that's
Well, and I think like, so with the 2002 edition, we used a COPS lease using our PI stream. And so that same idea of it'd have to be a really big ask because you'd have to do a traditional bond ask and something else in order to get that 80 million now. So instead of leveraging out the taxpayers and the community, hey, let's ask them for something that's reasonable, something that gets us halfway to the finish line, and then in time down the road, we come back and we have some debt capacity to play with, and there's still that option of like, okay, well, we still need to cover that difference, so maybe a COPS has to come back in. I think the other part too is, you know, then you're looking out another 30 years. If you do all the project in one, it's kind of back where we're at. So now we have 3 buildings that are all in really bad shape. So our PI is too thin trying to cover all those needs. Whereas if we have a new 6 through 12, then our PI could focus on Woodlands or be saved, because then we can bank that into a project. And so you're not trying to do these big jumps every 40 years. You're doing a progressive, you know, improving your facilities, maintaining your facilities, and more reasonable ask to the voters.
certain that you will be able to refinance in 10 years. And I'll throw out an example, like, you know, I bought my house here not quite 15 years ago. The interest rates today are probably twice what they were when I bought my house 15 years ago, right? So if I were looking to refinance today, like that wouldn't work, right? Like, because the interest rate that I bought at was much better than the interest rate I can get today. And is there a chance that like you can find yourself in 10 or 15 years unable to refinance because the interest rates have gone in the wrong direction?
Yeah, I would say anything's possible, right? There's no guarantee besides.
They're going that way. They seem like, you know, at least this, you know, if you think of it like a pendulum right now, like interest rates are like creeping up. They don't seem to be falling, right?
Right now, I think the Feds have stabilized them. And then if you go a 15-year pendulum back the other way, they were super low 15 years ago. So does that mean the pendulum swings back that way in 15 years from now? I don't know. I'm not a financial analyst. So yeah.
Just, I mean, if we're betting phase 2 on the ability to refinance, I just want to be careful that like that's a bet that we feel confident. You know what I mean?
Well, I guess I'm not betting, right? Because I don't want to bet with district finances and resources. What I'm saying is this is a path that can get us some new facilities and create future opportunities to address other other facility needs down the road. So
Interesting, Casey, but it's either a huge, kind of insurmountable ask now, or we divide it up.
I don't want to kick the can down the road for the next board. 10 like we've tapped the community, we've tapped the community out for half of the facilities plan, and we haven't left anything particularly like that the community will support for the next phase. We were just in Shelby last week or 2 weeks ago for softball, and I had like their history was they phased out their project, their building project, and they got phase 1 passed by their voters, and phase 2 was denied by their voters, and they were able to kind of like salvage things because the natural gas pipeline went through their area, and they were able to put a COPS on to in turn fund the rest of phase 2. But absent that, they were in trouble. And when I think of like the building wise, I guess to me, K through 5, like all of our kids go to K through 5 every day. right? They're there the entire school day. Like 6 through 12, I mean, Grant, if we're being honest, like how busy is this building during the course of the day? And how many kids are coming and going? And maybe there's a little bit of, could we fix that if we had a nicer facility? But we're not going to do away with CCP and online classes and some of the things that take our sophomores, juniors, and seniors outside of these buildings. I just wonder if we're over investing in one side of the equation and under resourcing the other. That's my concern.
Well, and I think I came up with this approach of the 6 through 12 and then make improvements to Woodlands because as I look at our 3 existing facilities, Woodlands is the most viable for being improved and still instructionally functional for the kids that we serve. So the learning environment at Woodlands right now is relatively similar to any other elementary school that's in the state of Ohio, whether it's 2 years old or 50 years old. The instructional space, the facility experience that students and the community and parents get at our middle school and high school are significantly behind what others are getting in the state of Ohio. And so for me, the priority is, okay, how do we at least, bring the one group so that we're there facilities-wise competitive with not just our neighbors, not just our region, but with the state of Ohio, and recognizing that the elementary school, it needs work, but the experience those kids are getting is more closely aligned with other facilities that are newer compared to what our middle school and high school. I mean, our middle school needs, it should have been closed a while ago. So I guess that's what brings me to why I'm proposing why I've been working on a 6 through 12 project and not pre-K through 5 or a pre-K through 8 project.
Dollar amounts aren't off, I think, what you were thinking.
It's all by square footage in the same multiplier, so it's just the extra square foot added, the 3 million, whatever, so, or 3 or 4
$3
million.
million, 60.
Well, and it's the 5 for Woodland, that we're improving that with, I don't know, lighting, heating, cooling systems all upgraded, so they work better. What we have systems that need boilers, chillers, all that need to be replaced.
An argument.
Is it? Yeah.
It's a very interesting argument when you word it, when you look at it the way you're saying. Yeah, I mean, the high school, the capacity in the high school is not what it used to be, and the capacity for pre-K through 5 is not changing. Those, like you said, those kids are in there every single day. So it is. It's an interesting thing to think about.
I would say really the capacity for 6 through 9 are also, they're there every day. It's when they get to those upper classes, some sophomores, but mostly junior, seniors, that they start to venture off. And I know this board's talked about how do we create a welcoming, engaging environment on campus to keep kids here. So when they have choice, they choose to stay here and be with their friends in a social environment as opposed to at home in an empty house or, down at somewhere else, right? So we want them to choose school. So really, with the facility programming, the discussion continues. We can continue to refine the programming. We can look at, inputs from staff in the community. Think about those community engagement opportunities that we offered, and then also the survey. So I've anticipated questions of, what elements can be included to enrich the elementary. With that connector, is there something that we can do to not bring a whole grade level over, but some of those related ancillary services, which opens up more spaces in the current footprint of the elementary? Are there spaces that are duplicated? So if we are going to have the vision of committing to a athletic campus that's available to the community outside of student use, so between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m., I would say that would be for student use. Outside of that, it could be for community use of a gym and a weight room and those types of things. Are we duplicating spaces by having also a competitive gym at the new school that we've just talked about? And our space is missing. So again, with McCormick, dual purpose. It's a gym surface and a stage. So do we look to take that competitive gym and say, we're going to have a competitive gym here, so that square footage dedicated to a competitive gym, could that be for a auditorium that has a performance stage? The square footage of the stage is already in our programming, so really changing from square footage from a competitive gym to square footage of a auditorium may be feasible, but really additional stakeholder input can be sought, and we can look at those design changes, look at those programming changes, while still maintaining a project cost of that $60 million. So again, we come in at that $60 million. Mike and I were on a legal update all-day seminar, and the one session was about facility litigation and what are things that get litigated, and so there was interest in that to avoid. So learning from others' mistakes. But one of it was, as you do your programming, you can move square footage from, let's make a little bit smaller here, a little bit bigger there, let's dedicate this in. But once you say, okay, programming is set, we're going to the drawings, that's when the construction manager at risk has to validate, yeah, this is the cost, not to exceed. The architect and the district, we all put our hands in and say, we're not going to exceed this cost. I would feel comfortable that it says we could, on the district side, we could commit to a $60 million project, even if some of this programming were to be tweaked between now and when it goes from programming to actual design work. And that would be a process that could be happening while we're leading up to the November election. And then once the voters approve it, we could really get refining on programming, and then some conceptual, like more than a conceptual drawing, but really something that this is what we're gonna be looking for. So in our facility.
Beloved rendering to the community and really do significant community outreach where we're going, having meetings with them.
So, just a question, and I may have missed it in some of your correspondence, but has there been excitement or input from the faculty at Woodlands about just renovating a portion of Woodlands? And I just think, do they feel like the redheaded stepdaughter in all this, or is there excitement? Are they thinking there's potential in renovating that newer part of Woodlands? And
Yeah, I think feeling like the red-headed stepchild. I'm not sure if that's how they're feeling. I honestly don't know how they're feeling. I do think that again, when I come back to the 3 facilities that we have, and which are in the most need of attention, and which are nearest what a new facility might be. Yeah, I know there's going to be some, well, what about us, right? So I think looking at some of these improvements and how we can include that in the scope of the district's program can help with that. And yeah, I guess
they're
I'm not
a
really
big part
answering
of
the
the
question.
fight. I mean, our teachers there are a big part of the buy-in and buying, helping the community buy in. And,
Also the teachers and parents.
yeah, I mean,
Right,
and
and the family.
And if that group is feeling like, well, wait a minute, that's not fair. Or, what about us? I think it makes the community buy-in all that much harder.
Yeah, and I would say elementary kids in our Woodlands building today will enjoy the benefit of a new 6 through 12. Whereas, sorry, Grant, but you're not going to get, you can come back and see it, but you're not going to enjoy it as a student. So just because of the time of design and then construction and then actual cut the ribbon and you're moving in, after the voters approve that funding source, it would probably be 3 to 4 years. I'm looking over at ABG, yeah. 3 years, yeah. So.
Quick question, the $60 million number, is that important because we feel like it can all come in under a traditional bond? Like, was that like tied to that number for that reason?
Yeah, for me, it's important because it's under our debt capacity. It's funding through a single source of a traditional bond that makes sense to Ohio residents, right? Most Ohio residents say, yeah, property tax, the majority of my property tax goes to schools, and then I have income tax that goes to different entities that, those are the kind of the different buckets. So for me, that was kind of like the importance, and then also the programming. So as the programming came together, if the programming that the large group did came back and it was like, you're going to have to spend $75 million to get everything that they're wishing for, that would have been a more difficult place to be at. So having everything they want is $65 million. We can make some trims and remove some square footage here and there, gets us to 60 million.
I'm going to throw out a thought, and that is set aside Ohio voters generally. Let's talk about this community specifically, and a community where a third, not quite a third of our voters are over 65, right? And where there's a bit of an aversion to property taxes going up, at least significantly. I think we have to consider whether the number 60, 70, 80, whatever it is, I think we have to consider some sort of hybrid funding where if I'm 80 years old living in a house that I bought for $25,000 that's now worth $500,000, right? And I don't have any kids or otherwise have connection to the schools that we've got to ask something from those folks. We can't get this done without that. But do we put the entire burden on them, or do we have a mix of traditional property tax and some sort of income tax, especially the income tax that's not hitting fixed incomes like Social Security and pensions and things like that? I throw that out there because we've hit our head against, collectively as a district, we've hit our head against that wall on an operating levy now twice, and this is I think it's a different question, but it's a much bigger ask. And I do worry that if we just look at raising property taxes as the sole source of income, that we're gonna have trouble convincing a third of our voters that we need to convince that like this is a good, this is it's not even do they want to do it, can they afford to do it?
Yeah, and with that, I would say that we could explore any of those options that the board wishes to. The reason I keep coming back to the traditional bond levy is it is the lowest cost for construction compared to if you do a COPS, you're paying on interest rates, and those interest rates fluctuate as you share. Whereas if you do it by bond, you go to the bond market, you sell the bond, and then the tax revenue that comes in is paying down that bond debt. So it's the least expensive way to complete a project. Yeah, again, I'm just presenting this information for the board. It's ultimately the board that has to pass the two resolutions to be on the ballot. It is the board's decision.
I've been big on the income tax potentially since starting a few months back, but the cost of the bond, I mean, it's kind of convinced me, at least for now, to go this way. And my potential, like looking down the road, is that we have two of our bigger operating levies, both for in 28 and 29. Is we look at a substitute of those going to income tax, the earned income that you mentioned, where it doesn't hit, the pensions and investment income. But as we get to that point, while we're probably still building this facility, is we look to make that switch there to try to help ease that, like shift that burden a little bit, like you're suggesting, but do it in a different way than just on the building, but do it with our operating as we move towards those two, because they're back to back, right, Mike? 28 and
28 and 29. Yeah. One's, I think 28 is a smaller one. 29 is a little bit larger operating.
So that's another potential too, is we could, we'd have to see that through over 3 years or so, 4 years or whatever. But
I always think that those are answers we have to be prepared to talk about, or a plan that we have to be prepared. You know what I mean? Like, because again, I think if I'm that voter, I need to know, like, what you have me in for. You know what I mean?
I don't know how soon we could look at that substitute for those. Like, it would probably be one of the first ones up, or
Probably before that. Yeah. I think the first was on the 28th. We could probably look at 26, 27. We could probably start exploring if we're going to do a substitute.
It is, and I understand the desire to maybe stick with just bond. It's a lot cleaner. It's more sure from a finance perspective going forward. Do we, though, kind of create this ceiling for ourselves where we feel like, okay, well, then that tells us we need to do this in a phased approach because there's no way we can do everything then. And then does the number creep up to hit that ceiling, which then I hear Stacy on her point of saying, okay, so in 15 or 20 years, we've said phased approach, but we went a little big now. So now that restricts what's able to be done in 15 or 20 years. And I mean, you know, we can do what we want to do, right? We have 5 people in agreement, we can do it. And then we have to see if the voters will go with it. But I also want to be mindful, even if we say yes and the voters say yes, I don't want to look back in 15 years from now and whoever's sitting in these seats and say, sorry, whoops, you know, we charged too much, we built too big for a smaller population or half of the school. So that's what's in my mind too, was great K-12. I thought it was going to shrink down. And then the numbers from the beginning is one of the options were 48. And so I understand why it's, you know, looking at the other things and getting more into it. In the survey, it's bumped up a bit. The price has gone up quite a bit. But then are people going to look at this original number from the end of January and say, well, a whole new pre-K 12 was 71. Like, so why aren't we just doing that? And that was at a cost of 138 square foot per student. Lots of things to consider.
That number and that cost did not include any of the programming and extra square footage. That was, so you can add 20. Yeah.
This is a small thing, but I'm just thinking about if this is going, if a version of this plan is this is the athletic facility. Obviously, you need a gym, the whole gym class, right, or like stuff like that. But if I'm holding varsity basketball games, right, do I really want them like out at Woodlands at night going through the same traffic situation we talk about being problematic for school? Or is this, I mean, the nice thing about this spot here is like it is built to accommodate people, right? And like we really don't bother anybody out here too much because we're a bit isolated, right, from neighborhoods and things like that. If you're going to put a competitive gym, does it make sense to put it here so then at night, whether you need staffing, whether you need, if this is where people come versus kind of split, you know, between the two?
I think the biggest question was, do we need 2 competitive gyms? Do we need a middle school and a high school, or can you fit all the activities in one? Can you
And-
schedule it to have
and
one?
this last season-
And plus practice time and all that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, this
I
last.
mean, we've heard it. I've coached for 10 years basketball, and you can't get court time. I mean, I've lived through that. Like, but, and that's why we added the extra gym, is because that's all you ever hear. So, I mean, does it need to be another full competitive gym, or can it be another one here? Maybe, sure, all those things. I mean, the
Well,
square
that's
footage.
kind of
is
like the
there.
community field house that kept coming up too.
But the field house is like a turf.
I mean,
Like,
It's saying,
it's
yeah,
space,
yeah,
yeah.
it's more space.
Yeah.
Right.
well, and that's something that we don't have in here, right? And we kind of talked about it, but I don't think it's in these plans, right? Thinking
No,
about
that's
what are the community assets that people in the community, regardless of your age, whether your kid's in the school or not, if you're paying for this, what's your value? Like, what are you getting out of it? Are there things that you're getting out of it? You know, and potentially the offices, if Family Health Services or whichever provider has a physician, you know, physical health located here, and mental health that's accessible to community, right? Those are services now that we are able to deliver, somebody's able to deliver through these community facilities that we've designed as part of the plan.
I've been thinking about this the last few days. Our job is to put the best plan we can in front of the voters, and then it's up to them to decide if that's what they want. I mean, if we want to, I'd still be open to going for the whole thing, but you know it's going to be 90+ million, even though they gave us 71. before. By the time we do programming, do all that stuff, it's gonna be 90. I mean, sitting here today, I don't even know if I can tell you I would vote for that or not. I mean, I'd have to see what it all is, right? I mean, just being truthful. I mean, see what the numbers is, the amount of money, what you're getting for it. I mean,
I think
that's just where I was, you know, when we worked through this way and talked last time. That's where I was kind of coming back to a little bit myself. But like I'm still open to the bigger projects.
I think you framed up the conundrum, right? And that is like is the risk of going in two phases that you don't make anybody really happy, right? And that we risk like, I don't know, setting ourselves up for a tricky spot in phase two. Is there a thought that if you could kind of like accomplish what we wanted to accomplish in one ask and like build excitement for it, have like tangible kind of renderings that people could get excited about, you know, would that like, do committees start to form around something like that and really drive it through the community in a way that obviously we can't, you know, sitting here. That's my concern is everything you're saying is logical, and I appreciate the work everybody's put in. But can like, is it able to be a concept that can be sold in the community to rally around? And that's that's what concerns me a little bit.
Yeah, this was not the community engagement process that I guess I envisioned at the beginning with this. I envisioned having an actual like committee with employees and community members who were part of decision making.
So that's the first I've heard that, because in January, ABG presented to the board. In February, Baird presented to the board on the financial aspects of it. And then we went right into community engagement, where the board was there engaging with the community. And then last month, we did programming with internal stakeholders. Yes, we did not include general community members in that programming.
How are those
Decided to
people
go via
selected?
survey.
And we did a survey for the community as well. So what was your question?
The internal stakeholder, how were they selected, or did they volunteer?
I recruited people who I thought had good insight into, you know, previous work that the district's done. They had some
Yeah,
perspective on
and
that, and
Different spaces.
people who
and
were going to
things
be
like that.
here when the facility would be open and in use. And yes,
And you were there, Chris?
So that's the list of people that are on the agenda for the meeting.
the minutes. Yep,
That's the list of people who attended.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
We discussed whether to get more community input, and we decided on the survey at the time. And then we were kind of saying, you know, if we can come up with kind of, because it's a little bit backward, right? If we can come up with kind of a financial ask, then we can go with the skeleton rendering and say, here are some options within this and within this dollar amount, and get more community engagement there. So, you know, there's no right or wrong. There's just choices to make, and we can be paralyzed worrying about the best thing to do. But I think we've had really good momentum building, and we've done our due diligence at every.
I think, you know, right around that same time, we backed off a bit because of the news about the city, right? The income tax there, and Ehobe's going to have a building on the board that's going to affect, you know, our community members. You know, so I think part of the just looking at the little bit smaller portion of this was being conscious of that fact that there's going to be multiple school and city tax asks on the ballot this fall. Now, if we didn't have all those, would we maybe still be going for the whole thing? Maybe we throw caution to the wind and just do it? I don't know. That's when we backed off, honestly. I mean, the whole tone changed here like that month after. I mean, maybe you disagree with me, but
I think I respectfully disagree, because I don't think our enthusiasm backed off.
no. But I
I
mean,
think
how much?
I think we had some concerns, like you're saying. We had concerns that, yeah, the city's going for a 1.75 income tax increase. Yeah, Ehobe is wanting to do new stuff. So I think we maybe felt an obligation to our community to be like, oh man, there's a lot of potential asks right now. And I think we wanted to try and be as much like we wanted to be good stewards of what we were asking.
I'm saying the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. But I think a big concern of mine is, you know, we did have community engagement, but where was the community? Where was the community? I think that's a huge concern of mine. Is where was the community? And
You can't make grown people do things though.
Right.
So, you
No,
know,
but it's data. It's a data point. When you have 3 sessions and you only have so many, that's a data point that tells you we're not reaching the people yet. We create a survey, but the survey was designed really with with an idea in mind, and then asking people how they felt about it. It wasn't
So I'll speak to that because I
general.
designed that survey. I think people didn't come to the community engagement because it was too broad of an idea, too big of a question. They didn't know what they were being asked. So I designed a survey that was a little more targeted, a little more specific in, you know, do you want just straight up schools or do you want something that gives back to the community? Do you want a phased in, would you tolerate a phased in project or does it have to be all or none? Are you interested in focusing on a pre-K or not? Is the Woodlands property palatable or not? Those were targeted questions, and we had 479 responses. So I thought with more specificity, we got more participation. I think the city is getting good participation in their engagement activities because it's pretty specific. Do you want your income tax to go up 0.75 or not? So there is a specific ask that the community is responding to. I think ours was a good attempt, but the reality was, with the reality that we didn't ask specifically enough what you want, and so they didn't know what to come ready to answer with. That's my opinion.
I guess that's where I was saying we could phase in more community engagement going forward, you know, around what exactly people want to spend this money on with a basic rendering, because that, you know, we keep bringing up rendering and giving people visualization, and I think that is really what I've been trying to spit out for the last couple of meetings too, is maybe you get more engagement if people are frustrated with the choices that we've made so far. That wouldn't be a bad thing. Then we'd get some feedback, you know.
Something to support or criticize.
Yeah.
And I think, like, for me, like, the engagement would come, we're still in programming phase. So the programming just can't exceed a $60 million cost analysis. So for me, it's, okay, does the community resonate with the concept of a athletic campus that's available to the community use during non-student use times? Or are people going to say, you just built a brand new high school and there's not a competitive gym on that property? You guys are crazy. Like, that's what I would like to hear from the community. Again, either option results in a $60 million project. I would like to ask the community, do we need to include a auditorium with a performance stage in this project, or is that something that says we'll get to that down the road in the next phase or the next opportunity? I would, again, if the community is saying you're crazy for not having a competitive gym at the brand new school, well, we can't do both. We can't do an auditorium with a stage and a competitive gym. So let's talk about which one, because pick one or the other, and it stays within that $60 million cost analysis that we're on the ballot for in November. But if we're not ready to do that, I think if you continue to be too, I think if the district continues to be too broad, people are going to continue to have low level of engagement.
So what is our next step then? What's the action step that needs to be taken after all of this discussion? Because I'm sensing a bit of frustration in this discussion. And I feel like we need to have some action. So what are our next steps? How can we propel this forward in a positive way? Who do we need to engage? How do we continue to keep this bus going?
I hate to say the thing you do question that needs to be answered is, are we going to be ready to go to the ballot in November? Yes, then that's one path. If the answer is not, then, you know, maybe that gives us like time to answer all these questions we're talking about, right? The- You know, and I hear you, Chris, on the city piece, but then there's part of me that thinks the only real thing we need to put out in front of the community is what we intend to ask for. Whether we ask for it in November, we ask for it in March of 2025, you know, is to me less important, right? But I think the community should know before November when it goes to vote on the city's income tax, at least what else might be out there, you know, in line or in queue. And then they can think about like not just what the city's asking for, but like why are they asking for it? Is it a pressing need like school? Or is it something that as a community, you know, we may or may not need to invest in at this point, like, you know, these different amenities for tourists kind of thing.
After last month, I thought we were working towards getting these rendering. We're not going to get any of that until we do programming, get everything. We gave them the direction to go work in this manner. And like I said, I'm still open to doing the whole thing, but then we should get the Woodland side of the programming done, get it added, so they can have that all in the renderings when we go. I mean, right? You could do the resolution in June. You could do the second one in July, and you still don't have to put it on the ballot, right?
Yeah, correct. You could do the
By the
first one in
August
June.
filing or whatever. Yeah. Change it around.
Correct.
I'm curious,
But-
we just don't, because we don't have the communication infrastructure to do something of this magnitude.
Yeah, not today.
Not today, and I'm not sure you mean I think you need the things that we're talking about to show me the plan, show me what you want, right? And then I think that builds the excitement, and I get everybody's in a hurry, but like, I feel like we're gonna be in a hurry to go to the ballot in November and be told no.
We aren't getting the show me till we give them direction.
Right.
That's what we came to last time.
I know, and I guess I thought if you're sensing frustration from me, I feel like we're doing the cha-cha. Like I thought had come to this decision point that this was the route we were going to take, or we would have had him do the evaluation of the other of Woodlands as well.
Yeah, because where I left off last month was we were still waiting on the results of the survey and some of the kind of just like foundational like questions of was Woodlands a viable site to do either all or part of the project. I thought that's what we left in last month.
We did, and the survey's back, and the majority of the survey's back, and it's looking like it has viability to host really a pre-K-12 campus with how much of it being brand new. But as they shared tonight, there are a couple of question marks still out there. The sewer, the traffic flow, and the core sampling, we're still waiting on doing that. That's an expense of like $7,700 that Mike and I said, well, let's wait till after discussion tonight to sign that service contract to get it going, because again, we've invested some in exploring the Woodlands property. We've invested with ABG. We don't want to continue to invest in things that, you know, well, now we have to do them again because we waited. Like, again, we can wait to be on the ballot, but we waited to be on the ballot, or we went on the ballot and were told no, and now those assessments that we did have a time lapse on them, and so we have to do them again. So,
What is the shelf life of something like that? A couple of years? Yeah, I would think. So this year, next year, we're probably good with the due diligence that we're doing now, right? It's gonna have
yeah, we haven't invested any bad money per se,
Right.
but yeah.
I don't feel rushed to get on the ballot in November. I just think it was, I think to this point it's been a feasible goal to work toward. And I thought that this meeting tonight was going to be a pretty decent leap toward that goal if we could get Is there a different actionable step that anyone would like to take?
to know what programming it would lend, if you're asking. I'd like to know what programming at Woodlands costs. Just so that like we go in with eyes wide open, and if it's hey, that takes the project to $110 million, path is easy, right? But I mean, I imagine one of the questions we can anticipate the community asking is exactly like what Stacy said. Well, you guys said it was new 78 to do all of it. Like, why not just do it all now? And if we can come back either and say here's why we can't, or you know what, that does make sense. You know what I mean? If we're going to go through all of the trouble or whatever we want to call it, effort of getting an entire community together to make this kind of investment, it's not an exercise we want to try again 10 or 15 years from now.
Was the one option that was thrown in there too, when you look at Woodlands, keeping just the new portion of Woodlands that kind of had like a little bit of an income in between
20
price to it, yeah.
20 years old, right?
Which that I can make tons of sense, right? Because it sounds like it's pretty weird. Yeah.
Keeping the newer part of it.
This
Renovating.
this proposal is the
No,
renovation.
this is leaving.
Woodlands as it is.
All of Woodlands.
Correct.
Oh yeah, no, the only new build, and that was the question about, you know, Woodlands folks, because there'd be
Yeah, like so what would the middle ground between just like, I don't want to say let's differentiate because that's not fair, but like just the basics, but Woodland stays the same with a few minor upgrades, or the hybrid of we keep obviously the 2002, but we were to renovate the older part to bring it in line.
so, you know, we started these meetings in January, right? It's the first time we saw the validation was back, and we talked finance in February. So we've only had 4 meetings as a board where we've talked about this and trying to come to a decision. We've had some action in between, but I think we have to be realistic. I want to say realistic. I think one of the things we never talked about was process. How do we envision going through this process together? Because us just coming together, like other work has happened, and then we come together once a month for an hour and think we're going to have all the questions answered, all the, understand as much as we can understand. I think we're expecting ourselves to do a lot. It's a huge undertaking. And I guess that's where, we didn't talk about. My vision was kind of a committee. We started hearing some of this information. Like I thought, okay, so like a committee. So there's people from different groups that are in there doing all this, getting all the information. There's a question, doing that work together. So I feel like it's a little bit, for me, I feel like it's a little bit of that. It's kind of like come to meeting, like, well, wait, where did this come from? And I know you were very generous in meeting with me because I was like, wait, I want to understand how we got to here. But this question coming, I mean, it's kind of wanting to exhaust. Some of us, I think, are still in a divergent process of wanting to understand and seek information. And I think others feel the need and they're ready to be in that convergent part of the process and decision making, and they're just ready. So maybe that's a little bit of the tension that we're feeling, is we didn't really talk about mapping out what does this process look like for us, who's part of the decision making, who's part of the work, what work is happening in between the board meetings. So
I mean, I take a little offense to that because back in like December, January, I explained to the board how in January, AVG would come give their validation. In February, I'd have a finance expert come and talk. And then in March, I mean, we put those on the calendar at the organizational meeting. We will have these community engagements because that's what I heard the board wanted. They wanted all community to have the ability to give input. And when we did those engagements and it was less attended and less engaged than we had hoped, we then went with a survey. And so, we've created those opportunities. It's been a committee at the board level. And I and Mike and other administrators, we continue to get more information, continue to work with consultants, and then I continue to update the board because that was my understanding of what the design of moving forward was when we started talking about this really in the fall.
mm-hmm.
So to say that we didn't do the process or we didn't do that, that's just how I feel.
And I wonder if we as a board did ourselves a disservice by wanting to not have this project be a committee, some board representatives on a committee for this, and wanting the entire board to be part of this. We may have done ourselves a favor by just saying, let's keep a facilities committee. That then when we do meet once a month, or sometimes we meet twice a month if need be, those board members that attend that committee or are in, the conversations where you might pull in some administrators, you might pull in some other people, they can then communicate also, at the board meeting what's going on. And I'm not trying to say that your communication in any way is not valid. It is very valid. But I wonder if we maybe should rethink that, maybe a little.
But I think like at the 2023 organizational meeting, we paused on committee assignments. And then we had Terry Morgan from OSBA come in to do a little mini retreat. And she said, look, if more than 2 board members, in this case, all 5, want to be part of the facility committee, she said, then just make it a board update every month and James runs with it. And so that's what I've been doing since that meeting with Terry Morgan in 2023. And I continually provide you updates. I continually provide you information. And there's been reasons why decisions have been made. We looked at the 2 properties. We decided not to survey the high school. And we reviewed those reasons today. We're looking at Woodlands, and it's on one side. It's on one piece of property or the other because of the gas line that we've had information for. And that's all information that's been shared with the board prior to the meeting. And then at the board meeting, we're here to discuss it in a public board meeting. So, yep.
Nobody has done anything wrong. Everybody, we've discussed this, we've discussed it in open, we did come to those decisions. I'm saying what I feel, like if there are people that want to be part of a meeting where there's 14 members and we're talking programming, like I would have loved to be there. Could have had 2 members there. I'm a person, I'm very invested in this, I'm very interested in this. I was since I first came on the board, and an interim superintendent wanted to do it. Like, so to have the opportunity to be part of the process for, because I'm going to have a lot of questions about it, right? Like, I'm a curious person. I want to have a lot of questions. And I'd rather do that offline and not just sitting in a meeting, because these folks, they're putting in a lot of work. So nobody's done anything wrong. It's just got to this point and feeling like we have to make a decision. I mean, we see the timeline. I've got it. And I don't feel like I'm ready yet. So I'm trying to think too of like, what do I need to be there and to be sure that I can say, yep, absolutely 100%. This is the best thing that we can do right now. And I also want something that the voters are going to say yes to, that we're going to be able to do. So.
Something we can all agree on. I think that's the key. Is like it's not a criticism, but I feel like we're still at a point where we haven't brought the community along with us, and it's May, right? And if we're talking about November, I just don't see how from now until November that happens to get on the ballot. I mean, I'm thinking like we're asking each community member to chip in minimum for most people $10,000 over the life of a bond, for some a lot more than that, right? And so whether or not we held 3 meetings in March, whether or not we put out the survey, that's great. It's a great start. But if our bait is not catching a fish, then it's on us to like put out different bait in different places, because at the end of the day, like our goal isn't to say we check boxes. Our goal is to say that like citizens, like they get it, they understand the ask, they think it's reasonable, they support it, or we've put out the best plan possible and given everybody a chance to like ask all the questions, have all the information, because we're asking them to make a huge investment. You know what I mean? And I feel like there's still a lot of work left to do. Some of that by that board, some by this board we can't do, and we need others enough time and space and excitement for others to step in and lead. You know what I mean? And I don't see a path where we, and then set aside like all sorts of other logistics about November, like it's going to be a very loud presidential election with a lot of feelings at a national political level. Is it really the right time to try to like get your message out there? Is there going to be enough room to be heard on serious stuff when all that stuff's happening? I have doubts.
Well, I think that was the reservation from the beginning, but we were saying, why not just work toward that timeline until we come up against a hard stop? So since it's still a feasibility, maybe we can keep just still potential. You know, maybe we can keep still working on this timeline and, you know, move in that direction. And again, when you guys talk about community engagement, I agree with James, just from the perspective that I think it's so broad that that's why you're not getting the engagement. People don't understand really what we're asking. If everybody keeps bringing up renderings and things you can touch and see, and I think if we can get to a point where we can build those and have options and then start getting more community engagement, again, even if it's something they don't like, then they'll probably engage more, and that would be not a bad thing. So what I'm hearing is you'd like the numbers on woodland, correct, and the middle ground.
Yeah, middle ground option. Yeah, because it'd be wasteful unless it's
Well, we're
economically infeasible. It'd almost be wasteful just to like take down a thing that's really 20 years old. Right.
Well, we're still waiting on some survey results anyway. Like, there's no reason. Is there any reason we can't start asking for that stuff in parallel?
So is the board asking for us to do pre-K-12 programming? Is that what I'm hearing being discussed? I'll do whatever the board directs me to do. So be clear.
We have two options. We have the one presented tonight, right? Small renovation of woodlands to keep it functional and everything working as is, and some new fixtures and things like that. And a new 6 to 12, or we do the whole campus while utilizing the portion of woodlands that's the newer portion. I mean, honestly, like all the financial stuff I've looked at, if we want to do the bigger project, I would be in favor of that needs to be split between the bond and the half earned income, based on all the community engagement and everything. I know it wasn't much, but everybody was like, if you're asking for that big a number, you need to do it like a blended model. So I mean, we really have two options. So to get to that point on both, you have to do a programming for the woodland portion.
And the added value of that, even if we decide then to go with this 6 through what you presented tonight, is it gives us, I think, a better idea of what phase 2 looks like and what we're asking, or essentially kind of like the path that we're setting for the district long term.
So I think we need to give direction. We need to give James direction on what we are wanting him to do. I mean, I don't want to walk out of here tonight without an action point in what he's supposed to be doing, because that's frustrating and that's not fair. But what do we want? What do we want him? I guess I was under the impression, and I was under the wrong impression. I was under the impression that we were keeping the newer part of Woodlands, renovating that, and then moving forward with 6 through 12 in a brand new facility. That's what I was under the impression we were.
Making improvements to the entire Woodlands building
That's not what I was under the
to
impression.
extend its life.
Because I thought the older part of Woodlands was, that, what did you call it, that 2/3 where it wasn't worth trying to piecemeal it to even be renovated, but the newer portion had potential.
But remember, the OFCC renovation is like taking everything to current code. So it's like when you fix the roof, it's tearing it off, adding all the extra drains, adding all the things you need. And that's when we went back and asked them, that's where they came up with the $5 million was, what can this whole building be if we do a 10 or to 20 year, you know, so that was a new boilers, new chillers, new electric, in some areas lighting, some windows in some spots. Like, I mean, it was like a targeted, and that was the whole building getting touched, but it wasn't like a full, like to the OFCC,
Right.
everything to the latest, greatest standards. And, yeah.
What if it was just like a step in between, right? And I think that's the part that I guess I would propose that we explore, and that is what you just talked about, the idea of obviously we keep what we can and should keep, right? And I don't know if that's the 2002, but that seems like the most reasonable, right? Because even if we have to go in and update some things, we're not talking about lead, we're not talking about asbestos, I think, anymore in 2002, right? Like, depends on what part of China we got stuff from, right? But like, yeah, I mean, we should be good there. But that old version where the classrooms are still too small and the learning spaces, like, they're not. Like, what would it take if it's 5 million to kind of just touch it lightly? What would it take to kind of do it? I don't want to say right, but to do it like all the way. And then we can get into, do you do a connector or do you not because of the logistics of the parcel, right? Or the land. I get that piece is still kind of up for, can we just build on to Woodlands, or do we have to have some sort of like separate buildings with something in between?
And I guess too, I mean, we throw in that, what makes the most sense for our community? Does it make the most sense for our community? Are they going to buy into being good stewards of a portion of a building that could be renovated? Or is our community going to buy into, we want our kids to have everything new? You know, we want brand new facilities, we want everything new, we want to give our kids the best. I don't know.
Do you feel like what to James's point before that, especially that 2002 side of things, that doesn't feel like our kids are like in some, you know, are losing out on something. Like that's a nice facility, right? So now how do we carry that over so that every kid in that building is at or above, you know, that level?
And so our teachers in that building feel invested in it, and like they got something new out of it also.
Well, we know that building went from the I guess scope of services from that building is different today, and in some ways bigger today than it was in 2002, right? Granted, our enrollment was a little bit bigger in 2002, but we only looked at putting Woodlands as serving what, up through grade 4.
I don't. In 2002?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, because we back then we had 5 through 8 in Corman, and then 9 through 12 at the high school, right? So this is the first time that like Woodlands has ever been intended to serve pre-K, which didn't
No, that's not accurate. No.
Woodlands is designed to serve pre-K kids. They have classrooms with individual bathrooms attached to them, both in the 2 preschool rooms and in the 4 kindergarten rooms. It's actually, the original part of Woodlands is a very nice setup for elementary because of those embedded bathrooms that, does OFCC pre-K have those? Okay.
It's just so I can finish my thought.
Sorry, yeah.
It was never intended to serve all the way up to 6th grade. Right, which is what we've done now. We've stretched it.
It was.
It went to 6th grade.
It was
I went to
Shawnee.
sixth grade
The
there. I went
students.
to kindergarten there.
Students were split between Shawnee and Woodlands depending on where they lived in town. And then everybody was in Woodlands, and then it split back to Shawnee and Woodlands.
Okay, sorry, it was 5 through 8 at
Yeah,
when I was
yeah.
like a
No,
kid.
it was it was. So it wasn't pre-K when I
It was
went
kindergarten,
to kindergarten
yeah.
there, but it was kindergarten through 6th grade. Yeah, but it was like Stacey said, it was split. If you lived on the east side, you went to Shawnee. If you lived on the west side, you went to Woodlands. Yeah. Because the kindergarten rooms had bathrooms and sinks and
They do. They still do.
yeah.
Fair.
So we still need an action. We need an action point. We need to know what direction we're you're going in.
Could we engage in the programming exercise that encompasses woodlands so that we have an idea of what our options are and the costs?
That
attendant to
encompasses
them?
all of Woodlands or just the 2002 part of Woodlands?
Non-2002 part.
So we need to know.
So we're talking reno of all of Woodland,
No,
full reno.
are we?
Is that what
Oh,
you're?
we knew except for the in
You can't keep
between.
up with it all.
So.
The one option you gave us that only was there for like a day or two, and kind of like where
the
we
one,
replace all of it except the new part.
yeah, the one option we gave was, again, this was internally discussed, was to keep the 23,000 square feet of new woodland
Yeah.
and add another 32,000 square feet of wood elementary component to existing 23,000.
So if we're using 400, right?
I don't
Oh,
think
he-
32 is right.
Just a second.
Okay.
Just a second. So with this option, the project, without adding 10,000 extra square feet, which we need, was $67 million. If you remember that,
Without any programming.
without any programming, if you add another 12,000 square feet for programming, and you multiply by $400 a square feet, this is just rough numbers.
Sure.
Okay, so what is that? 10,000 is 4 million, 4.5 million, 5 million. So that's what. So it becomes 72 million to be most part. But that is if you want to go over $60 million project. But that may cover you K-12.
That's over our debt capacity.
That is good.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that. If we went K through 12, it has to be a hybrid of income tax and bond, right? I mean,
You can do, if the board or whoever wants to do part of the programming, we already have the 23,000 square feet. So we know that there are classrooms, those are existing. We always, when you put an addition to a building, you always take care of the existing. And then you can add whatever you want, how many number of classrooms you want in the elementary, PKK, just like the exercise you did for the middle school, high school, you can do the same exercise. But you will be pretty close than what we are saying right now. Around 70, 72.
Our debt capacity might go up though when the reevaluations happen, right? Isn't that what they told us when they?
It might, yeah.
we're 5 million off right now, right? The capacity is 67 million. If we were using 72 as a number, didn't somebody say 67 on a special something?
Or 68, 68.
With
right?
special needs.
I mean,
So
we're not like, you know.
Get 4 with the money from Shawnee and our half of our PI, so you could get 4 that way too.
5 million. Money from the state.
I would. So you're talking about
Still
action
more on
items,
the 11.
Jody. I think I would
That's what it
propose that, like, and it sounds like it wouldn't be maybe as like retreading old ground, but I would recommend we go through this programming process for Woodlands, using that assumption that we would keep the 2002 space and look at what would come on top of that, and that we engage, some of the Woodlands teachers, maybe some of the folks who may or may not have been super involved, obviously in the 6 through 12 side of things, engage them too. And again, it won't, whether we go with that plan or not, the work won't be for nothing because it will at least be relevant to phase 2.
I'd also like to just, I was looking through the programming, and if you look at the example school at the top of each section, there's 650 students, and the one we were talking about, 6 to 12, is 669 students. Is we need to take a look at those, and I know I keep saying it, the classrooms again, and the science labs, because in that example school, they have like 1 middle school science lab, and we're asking for 3. We have 2 high school science labs, we're asking for 3 or 4. Like, are those labs all individually necessary, or do we have a classroom and then a lab for when they need? Like, I know we talked about it there. I'm not saying we need to get. Do you need a lab for? I'm saying this wrong.
I don't.
Do you need a lab for every one of the science classes? Or you only need a lab for the certain classes that need a lab. Like, and then the number of classrooms, I think we're at like 14 in the sample school. Is that like for the high school? Was that like 9? In the middle school is at 7. We're at like 12 or something. So I mean, I know I asked earlier and you said you looked at it, but I just maybe it's how those new schools operate is totally different like, than the classical way we're looking. I mean, has any of our staff or administrators gone to new schools that opened in the last 5 years to see how they're using them, how they're looking at them, how they're? I mean, has there been a team like you guys put together to go?
No, there hasn't been a team.
I mean, maybe that could help, like in that program too, as we go further. I mean, maybe we don't need it for like next month, but as you finalize all these drawings and everything, I mean, there's quite a few classrooms being asked for, like, you know, our size school district. Like based on that example, I'm not saying that example is right either, because we have some spaces that we added classrooms and took away some of the multi-use spaces that they proposed to, so you got to kind of go back and forth. But maybe while you're taking a look at this other program, just double check, like think through that again. Like, you need 4 science labs, or you need 2 science labs, and another other type of room, or
You can stagger which class is in a lab versus a classroom. You know what I mean? That sort of thing.
I mean, I haven't been in. I mean, I've been in those schools, but I haven't on a functional level up to, or been in any of them to be able to like. You guys have a better chance of doing that. But how those new schools are operated, I know. They mentioned like, oh, some of these shared spaces, they learn how to schedule them, use them, rotate in and out of them, things like that. I mean, if we're just splitting hairs on one room, it's not a big deal. But
The shared lab is a big.
just think about it again. I mean,
Yeah, and I would say like we have a shared lab here, and so then each teacher has their own classroom. And so when you add that all up, it starts becoming more square footage. And then especially when that lab is only used 2 or 3 days out of the week, because the other days of the week both teachers are doing more instructional theory approach. The science teachers were saying, now we also have 2 science labs, Coach Hollers and Mr. Blevins, where they teach within the lab, and they say like, so don't give us the classroom, just give us a lab. And so that's what we did. So so each, like 4 science labs at the high school, because there are 4 science teachers at the high school, and then 1 for each grade level at the middle school. Now you could say with instructional grade level appropriateness of 6th grade, you probably don't need a science lab, a dedicated science lab for 6th grade. So you could take that.
You're not giving them Bunsen burners and that.
No. And even in the revised programming that we did, just a small group, we took the middle school labs and made them a little bit smaller than the high school labs, because you have Bunsen burners and other like chemistry labs, bio labs that happen here at the high school, whereas at the middle school it's still a science lab, but they're dealing with water, and like they're not dealing with harsh chemicals and things like that. So so we scaled back the size of the middle school science lab, and we can scale back a 6th grade science lab to just a classroom size lab, and then when they need, they can use that multi studio space when they need to do like a physics type lab and things like that at the 6th grade level.
We should probably be. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
I think we should probably be as much as like I think the teacher input's really important. We probably want to be careful about building based on like how one teacher approaches. Like well, I like to teach from my lab. That's great, but like the difference between you teaching from a lab every day and you sharing a lab might be $250,000, right? It's 1,400 square feet versus 900 square feet.
Well, yeah, but you still need a science lab for them to go to.
Sure,
Right.
but if we could do, let's say, 4 science teachers that need labs, and you have 2 labs versus 4, right? It makes it. I mean, if we're talking about like being efficient with
Swinging between classroom and lab. That was pitched by me, and the teacher leadership did not like that idea.
and I think this is that part where we're all probably going to have to like to get as much as we can for everybody. We'll probably like not be able to get everybody everything they want, right? But I hesitate to build something for 30 years based on like, well, this is how like one specific teacher prefers to do it. I understand, and I wish we could say yes to everything, but we've got to figure out a way to accomplish as much as we can with a limited amount of loaves and fishes, right?
I don't understand why the teachers wouldn't want a grand lab. I mean, why wouldn't you want to build a state-of-the-art lab, teach in your classroom, but then be able to have access to a great lab? I just, that to me makes so much more sense than having it right in the classroom.
So, I mean, to your point though, like those are easy, right? Like not easy, but I mean, those are those like probably little pieces where if the difference between going K through or pre-K through 12 and just doing 6 through 12 and having to worry about what happens next 15 years from now is $5 million, right? Or whatever, like, I feel like we can find it. You know what I mean? Whether it's through additional revenue or like scaling down the project a little bit.
So yeah, do we know what we're doing?
I still don't know what I'm doing after this meeting.
I'm sorry,
We're doing, I think you've been asked to figure out programming
at Woodland.
at Woodlands. What additional cost programming at Woodlands would be with not touching the new part of the building, but doing upgrades to the original part of the building. Am I correct in that?
That's what I've asked.
I mean, am I correct? I mean,
That's what we were asking, but do we want to take like the recommendation and just add like 10,000 square feet, or do we want to actually have a program?
I feel like we owe it to the Woodlands folks to like get their 2 cents as we did with the high school and middle school people. That's just my.
That wouldn't be skipped, but I mean for like numbers purposes, like, you would still do it at some point, right? I would assume. Like, yeah.
So, but what was the so if the project was build new pre-K through 3rd, because you're going to keep 4th and 5th and the Woodlands gym, and then a 6th through 12. What was the pre-programming dollar amount on that you had when we met on Good Friday? 67 million. So it's 7 million more than a programmed 6 through 12.
Right, and am I right to say you're saying for the programming, rough numbers, we'll hold it to add another 5, that would take us to 72.
Because we've already added that to the 6 to 12.
So what we did is,
But now you might have
I'm gonna go over one more time.
Yep.
So we have a 23,400 square feet of new addition, which is
new addition where?
Woodland.
The 2002.
2002.
We're talking about the newer part.
You're talking about the newer part of what?
Yeah,
Okay.
which is 2000.
Okay.
22.
Okay.
Relative to us.
Relative, that's all that. And then if you add another for PK through 5 enrollment, just without any programming, if you add another 33,000 square feet, that will give you PK through 5 around 30, 33 plus 23 is 56,000 square feet for PK component
So
only.
you're proposing the new part, the 2002 part, then you're proposing building onto that new part, the pre-K through 5 building.
That becomes a PK5.
But you're not
How-
renovating that old part, you're building a brand new part.
Just I have a couple of $1 million put aside for 22 edition.
Okay, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about,
2000.
I'm talking about the you know about the new part. But you're talking about building onto that new part not using the original woodlands,
Right.
taking that away
That is
and
correct.
building on, building on a new pre-K through 5 addition that would go with that woodlands existing newer portion.
Part of the K-12 campus, but
Correct.
33,000 will go towards the EK5 campus or component of the campus.
I think what would be really helpful to me, and this is just me because I am absolutely 100% not a numbers person at all, is if we could have a packet of information that said, this is what a brand new campus with all brand new facilities, this is what this is going to cost. This is what this packet over here is, a brand new 6 through 12 with keeping the existing 2002 woodlands, but adding on a brand new portion of woodlands. That's what this is going to cost. I think there's been so many numbers that have been thrown out tonight and have been thrown out in these meetings we've had that it's hard for me to wrap my head around. Like, well, what plan is that? What plan are we talking about?
We haven't seen one yet, right, for what you're talking about now. Keep the 2002, add the new to make up to that original amount of the 56,000 square feet for pre-K through 5 programming, and then leave the 612 programming. It's
I've
not
not
something
seen-
we've seen yet,
You have
right?
not seen it.
Okay.
No. You have
Because
not.
we had all new pre-K 5 and then all new pre-K as part of the original plans. Okay.
The 5 million or so that was allocated for the woodlands renovations under the plan that James initially presented tonight, is some of that become freed up under this if we were to go down this?
Yeah.
How much? Give or take.
3 million. 3 million. 3 million will get freed up. Because I have 2 million still keeping up for 2002
Yeah, because you
edition.
still want it, right? You still want to
Still have to put.
understood.
Still have to take the ceiling down, right?
Understood. But that gives us a little bit of that money to work with for upgrade. Okay. Do we vote? It's just plan, right? It's not like we're taking action.
We're not taking any action. We're just
No action.
asking for clarification. Yeah.
I mean, and you talked before about having board representation at programming. I know Chris was at the last one. That's great. Did anybody, Stacey, you expressed interest in wanting to be at? Is that something that you make available to maybe Chris or Stacey or somebody else, that they could join in on that process?
Yeah, that's fine. So I just go ahead.
I don't know. You're like in for the time, man. Like,
We need some continuity.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I think it needs to be the same people because yeah, I think it needs to be. We have more than. Yeah, if we're
but you
gonna have
can
two people,
compare
it
and
needs to be the
contrast,
same
Chris.
people.
Like you're already in on the one plan, so I think.
Right, so the other part is if we want this program. Okay, so wait, let me start here first. So I've been asked for the cost analysis of a new pre-K-12 building, and we have that number pre-programming, and it's about
whole new.
$77 million. Right.
Mm.
The next one I've been asked for is the cost of improving woodlands and building a 6 through 12. That's what we programmed, and that's the cost we had. It came in at the $60 million. Okay, and then the third one is a new pre-K-12 with keeping the 2002 wing. So those are the three that the board would like to see cost on. So the first was a brand new pre-K-12. Do you guys want that programmed out, or do you just want?
I would like it programmed out.
Is that easy to do based on the other conversations that have happened, like kind of knowing what they wanted in a 612? Or could we piece it together if then there's going to be conversations about?
So I think having done the program activity once with ADG, if we're looking at a brand new pre-K-12 building, that's a little bit of a different programming than if you're looking at a 6 through 12 and then you're programming a pre-K through 5. And that, yeah, because you have some shared spaces of the utility closets and some offices and kitchen and cafeteria. Whereas if you have two separate buildings, then you have kind of two separate programs.
Some of that's going to be driven a little bit by the limitations on the parcel, right? Or may be driven a little bit on limitations.
But
on
we
the
could put
parcel.
one on one side and one on the other.
Right. But what you're
Yeah,
saying
you have
is we can't build over that gas line.
You
So
can have a second-story walkway that connects over the road. Because
We could put a playground, we could put a parking lot, we could put a green field.
The reason they say is just in case if something happens to the gas line.
Sure.
we
True
can
story.
access
Yes.
Yeah. I guess we could build on it, but if they come knock on our door and say, hey, we need to dig this up. Yeah.
that sounds like
Right.
that.
Okay, so you guys would like a program for a brand new pre-K-12 building. And so we already have that pre-program number of 78 million. And so we can anticipate that's going to be over 80 million. But you guys want that number.
Yep.
And then you want improvements at Woodlands in the 6 through 12. So we really have that one done already. Then you want a new pre-K-12 with keeping the 2002 edition program. Okay. And then, so those three I will deliver to you. The question is, when would you like it by? Because if you want it by Monday, I can get that done. With the exception of, we will not be able to get staff engagement between tonight and Monday. If you want it by the June 17th meeting, it may be tough, because right now staff are focused on finishing the school year, working with their kids, sending them off to a great summer, and then they also like to go to their summer. So while the idea of, hey, help us program a building might attract them to come in one day, a June 12th turnaround might be tough. But if the board says no, we're looking for a rough number. So James, you and a few others that you've used before, run the script to see what you get. Then I can have that by June 17th. But that's also the same meeting that if you want to be on the November ballot, you're going to have to be acting on a resolution at that meeting. So
What's our feasibility of being ready to do this in a month?
I could, if you're saying James,
No, I'm not.
you
I'm not.
and
I'm-
Mike and
No,
Julie
no.
and
I'm
others
saying
get the
from
program done, we could have it back to you by Monday.
No, I don't want. I'm saying realistically, we should give them time. Give yourselves time. It's the end of the year. It's a really hectic, busy time. I don't want us to have this artificially placed. It's like when we said as a board, like we'll proceed as if we will go with November, but we're not committed to it. So if we're like, we need more time, we'll take more time. And I feel like we're trying to scramble to get things to hit that. And I guess I always thought it was more like, well, if we hit it, if we're ready and it's time, great. But I don't want us to be
Right, to short circuit a
Leading
process
anything.
because we're trying to like crack a deadline that frankly I think has other problems with it.
At least even rough numbers, if you have some players that you know you can go to at Woodlands that might be able to just even give us some kind of direction or programming. It doesn't have, obviously it's not going to be what everybody wants, but if you have some people there, what would programming look like?
Let's put the offer out there. I mean, I think we may be surprised. There might be some people that are super passionate about the concept. There may be some people that, like you said, logistically just can't do it by then. Yeah, I mean, I'd put the offer out there.
I think to what Stacy said, we need to proceed as if we are moving towards and vote in June and then in July, and we need to keep the process going. So I think you do whatever you're able, the numbers that you're able to get, and we will go. If you get them before the June meeting, you know, you can email them out to us, and we can obviously look at them before June.
Got one more thought since we're being crazy, and that is this campus right here. Like what our thought would be for this space here, which I think means more to the community that we're probably giving community credit to. And when we talk about things that excite the community or can like galvanize the community, I think this envisioning what like this activities campus or whatever we want to call it might look like. You know, so whether it's I was just, you know, softball and baseball are going out here, if, you know, what basketball would look like, maybe we put in, instead of like just an auxiliary gym, you use that like multi-purpose flooring that can be used for tennis or whatever, like, right, it's like super functional surfaces that aren't, you wouldn't necessarily play competitive basketball on it, like a high school game, but you can practice basketball on it, but you can also throw out tennis or whatever else. We've obviously got the stadium and the track here. I don't know what this is used for like club space, right? Or like that kids clubs could meet if they wanted to, or community service, whatever. And maybe there is a thought to maybe a field house isn't in this plan, but maybe we carve out space for it, whether it's going to be privately funded, whether the city wants to partner up on that, whatever it looks like. But it sure would be nice for that facility that could be somewhere to be on this campus so that it could really truly be used by our athletes, right? As opposed to, you know, out at Favens where it's kind of off, you know, everybody's got to drive their kid out there. So I don't think that's like a huge thing. I think that some of the work's already been done, but I think that's one of the things that the community would be curious about too, is what does that look like?
I want to thank AVG for being here,
Yeah,
helping us
absolutely.
through
So
this,
much.
and coming with the facts.
At this point, we need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
We have
Yeah, we are going into executive session for reasons of appointment, employment, dismissal, contracts, compensation of an employee.
Right.
Get a second?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Mrs. Henners,
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Dr. LaFay, Mr. Rager, Mrs. Mass.
Yes.
7:36.
Grant, are you back here for the next meeting? Next week? Is it next? Okay, all right. And then you're off for the summer?
Lucy's done, right? Thanks for being here, Grant.